I didn't cry on the drive home. I kept waiting for the tears to come, but they didn't. I just drove. Past the Walgreens on Maple, past the Methodist church where I used to take my son every Sunday when he was small. Past the Dollar General where I once bought him his first Halloween costume, a little pumpkin suit, $4.99s, and he wore it so proudly. I drove all the way home to my apartment on Clover Street, sat down in my kitchen, and stared at the wall. My hands were still shaking. I was 63 years old, and my son had just told me I made him look bad. His exact words. Standing in the doorway of the house, I had handed him the down payment for $140,000, every dollar I'd saved over 22 years of working double shifts at the hospital laundry, every Christmas bonus, every tax refund, every birthday card with a 20 inside that I had put straight into that savings account instead of spending on myself. He looked at me in my good coat, the navy one I wore to church, and he said, "Mom, this isn't a good time. You should have called." I had called 3 times that week. He hadn't answered. My son's name is Warren. He's 34. When he was born, I was 29, working 2 jobs, raising him alone after his father left when Warren was 18 months old. I didn't have family money. I didn't have a degree. I had a strong back and a stubbornness that my own mother used to call a blessing and a curse. Warren was my everything. I know every mother says that, but I mean it in the way that leaves marks. I missed my cousin's wedding because Warren had a fever. I wore the same winter boots for 6 years because Warren needed new cleats for baseball. I didn't take a vacation until he was in college, and even then I felt guilty about it. 3 days in Myrtle Beach with my friend Dolores, and I called him 4 times a day. He was a good boy. He really was. Quiet, thoughtful, a little serious. He used to leave notes on the kitchen counter when I worked nights. Little things. I ate dinner, don't worry. Or saved you some soup in the pot. I kept every single one in a shoebox under my bed. I don't know exactly when things changed. I think it happened slowly, the way rust does. You don't notice it until one day you pick up the thing and it crumbles in your hand. He met her 3 years ago. Her name is Cassandra. Her family is from Connecticut. Her father is an orthodontist and her mother teaches at a private school. They met at a work event. Warren had moved up at the marketing firm by then, suits every day, a company card, conference calls at 7 in the morning. He had worked hard for that. I was so proud of him I could burst. The first time he brought Cassandra home for Thanksgiving, she sat at my table and looked around my apartment the way people look at things they're already deciding to leave. She was polite enough, thanked me for the food, but she talked mostly to Warren, and whenever I said something about my neighbors, about a show I was watching, about anything from my life, she'd give this small smile and look away. Warren didn't notice, or if he did, he didn't say. After that, the calls got shorter. The visits stopped. Last Christmas, he told me they were going to Connecticut to be with her family. I said, okay. I cooked a small ham for myself and watched the Hallmark Channel and told myself this was just how it was now. Kids grow up, they build their own lives, you let them go. But then the calls about the house started. He came to me in February, said he and found a place in Glenwood. 4 bedrooms, good school district, everything Cassandra wanted. The price was $480,000. He'd been approved for a mortgage for the rest, but the bank wanted a significant down payment. And he and Cassandra had been saving, but with her graduate school loans and the cost of their apartment in the city, they were short. He needed $140,000. He sat across from me at my kitchen table and explained it very calmly and carefully, like he was pitching something at work. He had a folder with him, a breakdown of the loan terms. I didn't ask for the folder. I didn't need it. He was my son. He needed help. I said yes before he finished the sentence. He hugged me, really held on, said, "Mom, I won't forget this." We won't forget this. I believed his. I drove out to Glenwood the day they moved in. I'd bought a housewarming gift, a kind I'd always wanted but bought goss. Got men. I had it wrapped in a gift bag with tissue paper. I was so happy I sang along to the radio the whole drive. The house was beautiful. Cream-coloured siding, black shutters, a Japanese maple in the front yard. I pulled up behind the moving truck and walked to the front door and rang the bell. Warren answered. He was in a t-shirt and jeans, helping carry boxes. When he saw me, something shifted in his face. Not surprise exactly, more like a calculation. He stepped outside and pulled the door halfway closed behind him. "Mom," he said, "what are you doing here?" I held up the gift bag. "I brought you a housewarming present. I wanted to see the place." He looked past me at the street. I heard voices inside, Cassandra and someone else, a woman, probably her sister, who I'd met once at an engagement party. Warren lowered his voice. "This isn't a good time," he said. "We're in the middle of moving. It's chaotic in there." "I helped you move 3 Taos," I said. "I'm not here to get in the way, Mom," his voice was flat, quiet in a way that made the back of my neck go cold. "You should have called." "I did call. Warren, I called you. I know. I've been busy." He took the gift bag from my hand. "Thank you for this. I'll call you this week, okay? We'll set something up." And then he stepped back inside and closed the door. I stood there on the porch of the house I had given him $140,000 to buy, and I heard the laughter inside, and I heard his voice go easy and warm again as soon as the door clicked shut, and I walked back to my car. I sat in the driveway for a long time before I started the engine. I kept thinking, maybe he's embarrassed about something. Maybe Cassandra's family's inside and he doesn't want a fuss. Maybe I misread the moment. I'm good at making excuses for the people I love. I had years of practice on his father. I didn't go back for 6 weeks. I told myself I was giving him space. In reality, I was scared. Scared of what I'd see if I looked too closely, scared of what it would mean. We talked on the phone twice, short calls, him distracted, Cassandra's voice in the background asking him something, him saying 1 second and then cutting the call short. He never asked about my health, never asked about my job. I had been promoted to supervisor at the hospital that spring. 22 years in the laundry and finally a title, a small raise, my own schedule. He said, "That's great, Mom," in the same voice he used when he was 12 and I'd tell him something he didn't care about. I started talking to my friend Dolores more. She'd been through something similar with her own daughter. Not as bad, but that drift, that slow erasure, when your child's new life doesn't have room for you in it. She used to say, "Lena, the hardest thing about loving your kids isn't the sacrifice. It's learning that the sacrifice doesn't guarantee anything." Dolores was right. She's usually right. I just didn't want to hear it yet. Then I got the call. It was on a Thursday morning. I was at work, pulling linens out of the commercial dryers, and my cell phone buzzed in my apron pocket. Unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something made me answer. The man on the other end said he was calling from the county assessor's office. His name was Mr. Tatum. He asked me to confirm that I was Lena Josephine Crawford and that I had contributed funds toward the purchase of a property at 114 Birchwood Lane, Glenwood. I said yes. I told him it was a down payment, a gift to my son. There was a pause. Mr. Tatum said, "Ma'am, we've been conducting a routine review of recent property transfers in that area. There's an issue with the ownership documentation filed on that address. There's some paperwork that was submitted in your name, without your signature, that concerns us." I sat down on a laundry cart. My legs had gone away somewhere. "What kind of paperwork?" I asked. He said he couldn't give me details over the phone. He asked if I could come into the office the following morning. He said I should bring my identification and any records I had of the down payment transfer. I said yes. I said I'd be there. I hung up and sat in the steam of the laundry room for a long time. I thought about the folder Warren had brought to my kitchen table, the breakdown of loan terms, the way he'd had everything organized so neatly. I had signed a gift letter, standard practice, he said. The mortgage company required it, just a form saying the money was a gift and not a loan that would affect his debt ratio. I had signed it. I hadn't made a copy. That night I went through every piece of paper I had. Bank statements showing the wire transfer. Texts from Warren asking me to confirm the amount. The gift letter, which I can a photo of on my phone before he left with it. Thank God I had done that, because my friend Dolores had told me to keep records of everything, and I had rolled my eyes at her, but I had listened. I barely slept. The county office was a low beige building off Route 9. Mr. Tatum was a quiet man with reading glasses on a lanyard and the kind of measured voice that people in serious jobs learn. He walked me through what they had found. Apparently, a document had been filed 3 weeks after the closing. A quit-claim deed modification, transferring a partial ownership interest in the property to a holding LLC. The LLCs had been opened the same week my wire transfer had cleared. My name appeared on that modification as a consenting party. I had never seen that document in my life. My signature on it did not match my signature on the gift letter I showed him. He looked at them side by side and pressed his lips together. He said the issue had already been flagged for the county prosecutor's office. He said I was not under investigation. He said they were looking into the LLC and its formation, and that my documentation, the bank records, the texts, the photo of the gift letter was very helpful. He asked if I had retained an attorney. I said no. He handed me a list of legal aid organizations in the county. He said I should call one that day. I walked out into the parking lot and stood in the October air and thought about the Dutch oven. I had spent $180 on a Dutch oven for a house where my son had walked me to the door, handed him something carefully wrapped, and told me to call first next time. A house where someone had apparently filed paperwork with my forged signature to shuffle money into an LLC that I knew nothing about. I called Dolores. She didn't say I told you so. She just said, "What do you need me to do?" I said, "Come with me to see a lawyer." The attorney's name was Miss Ferreira. She worked at a small practice downtown, 40-something, calm in the way that people are calm when they've seen worse. I showed her everything I had. She read through it quietly. When she was done, she looked up at me over her glasses and said, "You were defrauded, Mrs. Crawford. The question now is by whom and to what extent. But the good news is you have documentation, and the county is already involved." She explained the situation in plain English. The quitclaim modification had been used to bring a third party, the LLC, into partial ownership of the property. If that modification stood and the LLC defaulted or was used in a larger scheme, the original mortgage could be thrown into dispute. It was, Miss Ferreira said carefully, a sophisticated move that someone either learned about or was advised on. I asked her what I should do. She said the first thing was to contact the mortgage company and put them on notice. The second was to file a police report. The third was to let the county process run its course, because they already had their eye on it. I asked her about Warren. She said, "That's a question for the investigators, Mrs. Crawford, not for me to answer today." I did not call Warren that week. I thought about it. I picked up the phone probably 15 times, but I put it back down. What would I even say? I thought about the Sunday mornings when he was little, when he'd crawl into my bed and put his cold feet on my legs, and I'd pretend to be asleep until he laughed. I thought about the summer he was 16, and we drove to Virginia Beach, just the two of us, and he got so sunburned he couldn't wear a shirt for 3 days. I thought about the night he called me from college at 2 in the morning because he'd failed his first midterm and was convinced his life was over. and I stayed on the phone with him for 2 hours until he calmed down. I thought about the $140,000. I thought about my signature on a document I'd never signed. On a Wednesday, 11 days after Mr. Tatum's call, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize, a 203 area code, which is Connecticut. I answered, thinking it might be the county office. It was Cassandra's mother. Her voice was even. Careful. She said her name was Harriet, which I already knew, and she said she was calling because she'd become aware of a situation involving the Glenwood property, and she thought I deserved to know certain things. She said that the LLC, the one my forged signature had been used to partially transfer the property into, had been opened by someone she referred to as a financial advisor Warren had been working with. She said this advisor had approached Warren about ways to protect assets, and that Warren had been told that modification was routine and legal. She paused then, a long pause. She said she was not certain Warren had fully understood what was being done. She said she wanted to believe that. But she also said Cassandra had found emails on their shared computer, emails she wasn't supposed to see, that suggested Warren had been communicating with this advisor for months before the closing, that struck into disgust before I had even wired the money. She said, I don't know if my daughter knew. I have to believe she didn't. But I thought you should hear this from someone who isn't trying to protect him. I didn't say much. I thanked her. I hung up. I sat in my kitchen, the same kitchen where my son had brought his folder and his loan breakdown and his careful presentation, the kitchen where I had said yes before he finished asking, and I was very still for a long time. The investigators contacted Warren 6 days later. He called me that same afternoon. I watched his name on my phone screen light up and go dark, light up and go dark. 3 calls I didn't Cesar. I list voicemail. I listened to it once, tight and controlled and slightly too fast. He said he needed to talk to me. He said there were things I didn't understand about the situation. He said the advisor had misled him and he hadn't known the filing would use my signature and everything had gotten out of hand. He said, Mom, please, I'm your son. I erased the message. I called Miss Ferreira and told her about the voicemail. She advised me not to have any direct communication with Warren while the investigation was ongoing. She said anything he told me could complicate both his situation and mine. I said, okay. I went back to work the next morning, pulled linens, folded sheets, talked to my co-workers about normal things. The weather turning cold, somebody's grandkid's birthday, whether the cafeteria was ever going to fix the coffee machine on the second floor. I didn't tell them what was happening. I wasn't ready to say it out loud yet. 3 months later, the LLC was dissolved under court order. The quitclaim modification was voided. The county prosecutor charged the financial advisor with fraud and document falsification. Warren was named as a cooperating witness, which meant, according to Ferreira, that he had provided enough information about the advisor's scheme to avoid being charged himself, though she was careful to say the investigation was still open. I did not get my $140,000 back. Not right away. Miss Ferreira filed a civil claim and there was a process, and she said it would take time and to be realistic about what I might recover and when. What I got back was the sense that the truth had a record now, that a document with my forged signature had been seen for what it was, that somebody, somewhere in a county office, had looked at 2 signatures side by side and thought, that doesn't match. I kept thinking about that. How the fraud was caught, not because Warren confessed, not because Cassandra's mother called me, not because of any of the things that felt human and complicated and torn, but because a county employee doing a routine review noticed something didn't add up. All that elaborate scheming, all those careful documents, and what undid it was just a person doing their job. Warren came to my apartment in January. I had agreed to let him come, but I told him he had 20 minutes and I would not offer him coffee. He looked tired, older. He sat down at my kitchen table, the same table, and he didn't bring a folder this time. He said he was sorry. He said he had let someone convince him that what they were doing was just financial planning and that he had told himself it wasn't really hurting me, and he understood now how wrong that was. I looked at him for a long time. I said, "You told Cassandra's family I was the kind of person you didn't have to explain to them. You let me stand on that porch with a gift I spent real money on and you sent me away. You let someone put my name on a document I never signed. Which one are you apologizing for?" He didn't answer right away. Finally, he said, "All of it." I told him I wasn't ready to forgive him. I told him that might come eventually because he was my son and I had loved him since before he had a name, and that love didn't switch off like a faucet. But I told him that love and trust were not the same thing, and he had taken something from me. Not just the money, not just the name on the document, but the trust, the certainty I'd had for 34 years that whatever else happened in this life, my son was good. He cried. I did not. He left after 40 minutes. I stood at the window and watched him walk to his car. Then I went to my bedroom and I got the shoebox from under my bed, the one with all his little notes from when he was young. I ate dinner. Don't worry. I sat on the edge of the mattress and I held them, one at a time. I put them back in the box. I put the box back under the bed. I tell this story not because I want sympathy and not because I have it figured out. I tell it because I think a lot of women my age have given things to people they loved and felt foolish about it afterward and wondered whether the foolishness was in the giving or somewhere else entirely. I don't think it was foolish to give. I think I would do most of it again. The sleepless nights, the double shifts, the boots I wore for 6 years. That wasn't foolishness, that was love, and it was real, and it built something, even if what it built was complicated. The $140,000, I'm still working with Miss Ferreira on recovering what I can. It will take time. I may not get all of it. I have accepted that possibility in the way you accept a diagnosis, not happily but with both feet on the floor. What I know now at 63 is this: I did not raise a bad person. I raised a person who made a very bad choice, who let someone lead him somewhere he should have refused to go, and who then did not tell me, and then let it get worse. I also know that I am still here, still working, still talking to Dolores, still attending my church on Sunday mornings, sitting in the third pew from the front where I have sat for 19 years. Last month, Warren sent me a card in the mail. No letter inside, just a card. On the front, it had a painting of a winter tree. Inside, he had written, "I'm still trying to be someone you can be proud of again. I know that's my job, not yours. I love you." I put it on my refrigerator. I'm not ready to take it down yet. I'm not sure what that means. Maybe it doesn't have to mean anything yet. Some things take longer than a week to find what's inside them. Some things take a whole lifetime, and even then you're still finding.